Hey everyone, welcome to another lesson with Odin. Today I'm going to be talking about pearl knotting. I've gotten a lot of requests to do them and even some commissions to do them, but I kind of think they're a little silly to do because the pearl knotting is just so super simple to do. So I thought I'd do this video and help you guys see, possibly do it for yourselves. The most common reason that people would want to do this is because they have either a really expensive pearl necklace or a very old heirloom necklace from like their mothers, their grandmothers, what have you, that if the thread is so old and bare that if it snaps, all of the pearls go away. They fall on the floor in a mess, and it's kind of hard to recover all of that, so people have adapted the pearl knotting technique in order to prevent that from happening, because if it breaks at one, the worst you'll lose is one. So, yeah, let me go over the supplies for you guys. The first thing you will need is some silk cord. This comes in a huge variety of colors, and the most common brand I have found is Griffin. You can either use plain traditional white to be classy, or you could change it up a little bit with some other colors. It comes in a variety of weights, but you really want to be careful with what weight you use because pearls have very finicky holes, I've found. So you obviously want the strongest silk that you can get, but you also want it to be able to fit through the pearl as well. It comes in a pre-strung needle. I don't know if you can see that there. Which is actually pretty good for this, but there are some techniques that I will point out that you will need to be aware of, because this needle is ridiculously huge. Yep. You will also obviously need your pearls. I will be using a demo of some of these. Show you guys what's going on. This is my pearl collection that I have. You will need some sort of cutting tools. And some glue, as well as some beads that are not really important. These will be used to help tie the knots at the end. You don't need to see them because of this item right here. These are called bead tips or clamshells, depending on where you go. But this is basically what you're going to use to finish the piece. These come in two different styles. You can see from the diagram here, you have this style, which is a hole that's already pre-cut, so you basically attach your clasp through a jump ring. And then there's this style, which kind of curls over, and you can still, again, either attach a jump ring or the clasp right to it. I generally don't like to use these because this is a very weak bend, and it often slips or breaks, so I hate using these. So, personally, just go for this style right here. That will pretty much have you covered for that. You obviously need your clasp as well. And yeah, so let's get started. Oh, one other thing that I forgot to mention, you will need either some sort of needle or pliers or pin. I've got this T-pin here that I just love these, they're friggin' versatile. I use these for holding chainmail, for holding threads through, for securing places that I want to keep, marking. So I recommend picking up a box of T-pins. You can get these at the quilting section of the craft store. But what you're basically going to use this for is for keeping the knots flush to the pearl while you're tying them, so that they don't slip off and you have no gaps in between the knot and the pearl, so they're not sliding all over the place. And that's what you need that for. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare our silk. So go ahead and open the package. We're going to pull out that needle. And the very first thing you're going to notice is this needle is freaking long. You don't need it to be this long. In fact, it can become kind of messy to deal with it this long, so I recommend cutting it to whatever your comfortable working length is. Then we're going to unravel the entire card. The reason we do this is we are going to actually be working from the very end of the thread instead of towards the beginning, or using only enough for the necklace. The reason is because of the way this needle is attached. If you cut it off, you're not getting it back on. So if you don't use this entire thread in your piece, you can just cut it off where you need to, and you still have this needle attached to the other end to use for like a bracelet or another necklace or something like that. This does mean that knotting will happen very, very frequently. So you just gotta be careful and take your time. Make sure you get all the knots out that you need to. Another thing you will notice is that as soon as you pull it right off the card, this thread is kinked. Like no other, because it matches the card. The easiest way to fix this is just by dunking it in water, cold water, and just kind of using your finger to flush out the kinks. Just kind of squeeze it between your fingertips. And just pulling it taut, and it'll eventually work out the kinks. And it sometimes makes an interesting noise. It'll probably take 2 or 3 run-throughs in order to get the kinks perfectly out, and it doesn't really have to be too perfect because it's going to be mostly hidden inside knots anyway. One other thing you might notice is the smell of the silk. It is a natural fiber, so it has kind of a nasty, musty smell of either old leather or, well, fart. It does wear off eventually after wear, but you can keep running it under cold water to try to get the initial smell out of it. But just beware that that is something to deal with. Alright, and that is how you prepare your thread. Right, so I have my clamshell here. It's a little shiny silver clamshell thing. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your opposite end from the needle, and you're going to thread it through the little hole here. Then you're going to take your extra beads that you don't care about and you don't want to see. You're going to thread one of those through there. That. And you're going to take an overhand knot, and you are going to tie over that bead. So you have a little knot through here. You're going to do a little double knot as well, so do it again. You can also do a surgeon's knot, which you loop it once over, and then you do it again. Then pull it tight. If I can get my fingers to work, there we go. So pull that tight. You can do this however many times you feel like. Alright. Alright, then we're going to take a little bit of glue. Whoops, and my glue is going to explode all over the place. Ugh, that's fantastic. Okay. Then we will dab a little bit on the knot and wait for that. There we go. Try not to get it on your hands because you are using super glue, and super glue is very, very nasty to flesh. Kept that up safely over there. Alright. So once you've got that knotted, before it dries, you're going to slide it over, slide the bead tip over, and you're going to use either your fingertips or a pair of pliers. You can kind of see that the bead is, let's see, let me get that to focus. Focus a little bit more. Just a little bit more, that's all I need. That way. That'll do. Okay. And you're going to shut the clamshell on top of it. Remember that thing I said about, you know. You can even take a pair of pliers and hold it tighter. So you end up either with something like that. If you don't want this bead to be seen at all, you can use either smaller beads or just do a bunch of knots. Make sure that when you're doing the knots on the inside, you have a large enough knot in order so that it doesn't slip through this pretty massive hole in the center of your clamshell. Once the glue is dry, you can go ahead and clip this end short right here. Right here. And then you are ready for your pearl knotting. Okay, so once your clamshell is ready, you're going to want to actually tie a knot right at the clamshell because you don't want the metal to rub against the pearls and scratch them and or break them. This is where this pin comes in handy because it holds it flush to the clamshell, so you can tie a whole knot and then just bring it down. Like that. It's one knot. We're going to tie another right here. All the way down. Tie just a plain overhand knot. Yeah, maybe one more for good measure. There we go. Okay. So now we are ready to get started. What we're going to do is pretty much the same thing as that. We're going to take our pearl, stick it in through the needle, or lose it and drop it. Where'd the hole go? There we go. Stick it all the way through, slide it all the way down, like that. Then we are going to make another overhand knot. Make the loop as tiny as possible. And we're going to hold the pin up against the pearl. So that our loop and our knot will go flush against the pearl. Until eventually you can pull the pin out and push it down. It'll take a lot of practice with this so that you can get the knot right up against that pearl. But if all else fails and you don't want to try again, just tie another knot to close that gap. So we're going to do another overhand knot. And push the knot down. And you see I've got like a gap going on over there. So I think I'm going to make a third knot. It'll also help when you use thicker silk as well. Because right now I'm using a number 1 and that is super tiny. And I do have a lot of leeway in this pearl, which is good. But if you're doing something like the tiny, tiny, tiny micro seed pearls, you're going to have some fun. So we're going to do an overhand knot. We're going to push the loop down. and push that down. There we go. And there you have it. Well, you will if I focus. There we go. That nut is right up against that pearl. And that's basically the entire technique, so I'll go through it once more for you. Alright. So we will take our pearl, thread it through our needle, bring it all the way down, then we will do an overhand knot. Then we're going to hold the pearl tight up against the previous knot. And we're going to hold this knot down while we pull it close, so it lands close to this pearl. You know, so futz with it, see, because it doesn't want to do that right now. There we go. Like that. We'll do it again. Overhand knot. Pull that knot down. There you go. And since this one is not close enough for me, I think I'm going to do it once more. So overhand knot, pull everything through. And there you have it. There we go. And you keep going like this until you have run out of pearls. Alright, and then once you've done that, we will be adding the other clamshell, which is the exact same thing. All you're going to be doing is adding it in the reverse order. So, we're going to add our clamshell first. Will, if I can find my needle. There we go. Add the clamshell first. Pull it all the way down. Let's see. Then you will add your accent bead. I'm using a smaller one this time so I can show you what the thing looks like at the end. Hold that all the way down. Now this one gets a little tricky because you're going to have to pull this one tight into flush next to the previous pearl and the knot, so it might get a little bit tricky. But what you're going to do is you will tie the overhand knot onto around this seed bead. Pull it down so that you trap it, and then we're going to take our pin and push it inside of that clamshell. In. There we go, like that. Yeah, it's resting inside there, kind of. Yep. Everything's so shiny, my lighting isn't great. There we go. So now it is resting inside of this clamshell. You're going to do another knot. again and push it inside the clamshell so that the seed bead gets trapped. Not as tight. You'll do that for probably another once or twice more. Then you will glue it. And then you'll use a pair of pliers or your fingertips. This metal tends to be pretty flexible, so you just close it shut. And then you're going to cut your end when the glue dries. Then you attach your clasp and you are finished. And that is how you do pearl knotting. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you have any other suggestions or what else you'd like to see. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on my next adventure.